really an honor to be able to speak with you today, Brendan. So thanks for joining us at Sense Music Media.
Absolutely. It's great to be here.
Now, there is, yeah, as always, a reason why we're talking today, and that is DETHKLOK coming to Australia.
Finally, Death Clock is after almost 20 years. It's nice to be able to have Death Clock finally come to Australia. So we're really excited to be coming there.
And as you've seen, Australia as well is also extremely excited for you to come. The tour has already seen additional shows added to it, as well as venue upgrades to the previously announced shows. So yes, we are frothing to get some DETHKLOK.
That's good to hear. That's really nice to hear. I gotta say, it's really funny because this is such a domestic American product. So we know how strong heavy metal is in Rush in Europe, in Australia, but we haven't really like set our flag down anywhere because we never really knew. I had a hunch Australia would maybe be interested in us because I went and did some promotion in Australia like over 10 years ago to help release the DVDs of the show. So I knew there may have been something, some kind of spark there back then. So I was really happy to hear that the Australians were happy to have us.
Oh no, we definitely are. Uh, yeah, like there's so many bands being in Australia and on the other side of the world that just don't make it here, and especially a show that is well, a band that is essentially a cartoon. The logistics, the realities of them coming, like obviously you're a real person who does real things in real life, but DETHKLOK being, yeah,
Yeah.
fictional characters. Like what's the likelihood that we will ever get to see them? And yeah, well, now's our chance. So if you're listening, if you haven't bought tickets, don't snooze. They
Yeah, yeah,
upgraded the
yeah.
venues for a reason.
Yeah, yeah. Absolutely. And this show, it's something that was like a concept of it was an early concept from when we were pitching the show initially to the network. The thought process was, can we make a TV show? Can I write music for every single episode? Can we build the characters, build the stories? And then at the end, can we put out an album? Okay, if we put out an album, then how are we going to tour it? And I thought, well, what did the Gorillas do? And I thought, okay, well, I think I rented a video at some point and they were like behind scrims and they were projecting their shadows on. And I thought, okay, that sounds really cool. But I think we need to put our band in front because as you can tell, I don't look anything like any of the characters and neither does the rest of the band. But as it turns out, we sound exactly like them. So,
What coincidence?
so that's the idea is we're on the bottom. We're like a pit band and on stage with the ballet at the same time. And we have a gigantic movie theater size screen behind us and we're playing in lockstep with the picture. So we're making sure that every downbeat is coinciding with the cut, that there's a wonderful kind of magical synergy happening between band and visual. And that's what the show is. And it's my personal challenge to entertain a heavy metal audience as hard as I possibly can through brutality, through Gene Hoglan's playing, through Neely Brosh and Pete Griffin, and through comedy as well. So how entertained can we leave you, and how can we just like put you through the crazy labyrinth of Metalocalypse and spit you out back onto the streets afterwards?
And that makes absolute sense with you saying again there the lockstep of your live performance with the cinema screen in the background, because that was one of the coolest things about Metalocalypse, how dedicated you were with the animation team of making sure all of the the musicians, the hand movements, the riffage, the drumming synced up as true to life as possible with the performances that were being played. Have you seen any of those videos they do where they reenact like drumming in cartoons?
Oh, I don't think I've seen those, but yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, our drumming is never as good as the guitar playing because I'm a guitar player and not a drummer. But every once in a while, Gene Hoglan has come through the studio and he's like, "Wait a minute, that's not the right beater for a kick drum. That's a felt beater. That's that's for like an old. It's not a metal. You need like either a plastic or a wood beater." So he'd come in and comment on the drums, and he'd say like, "Oh, what's?" And then sometimes I'd film him and use him as reference, for the show. I was when coming up with the idea of Metalocalypse, the idea for me was to build something that was kind of for me when I was discovering heavy metal when I was 14 years old and I was discovering guitar. I was lucky enough to have a friend up the street who knew everything, who knew Merciful Fate, King Diamond, Iron Maiden, Metallica, Slayer, Black Sabbath, and even walked me through all the stuff that I didn't know, like all the Zeppelin stuff and this. Like he taught me everything in an afternoon. And if I hadn't met this friend who I'm still very good friends with, I don't know who I would be, really. And I thought maybe
Your own
this,
personal algorithm.
yeah, seriously. I mean, it was just fortunately, there's no way I would have ever known this stuff. But I thought, I always wish there was a TV show that acknowledged music and guitars and stuff like that. And I thought I'm gonna build it now as an adult for that 14-year-old. And maybe it's a kid like me or somebody else who's kind of getting interested or in one way, a teenager has nothing in their life. They've got no money. They probably don't have a job. They have nothing their house is their parents' house. The one thing that they have is music. So I thought, how can I give a gift to that kid who's kind of like who's like me at 14? And part of that cocktail is get the guitars right. Can I animate them properly? So every time we had a new song, which is every single episode, I would do a short instructional video. I'd film myself for the animation. I'd go, this is Squiscar's part. This is Toki's part. Toki's hitting these stabs while Squiscar's playing these, the longer kind of riff, and then Toki's hitting these stabs on top of it. And then, okay, here's the guitar solo. Pay attention. My right hand is probably in the same place. I'm just going up and down like this. My left hand is doing all this stuff. So let's check this out. I'm on the 12th fret with my pinky and I'm doing this. So like I would give a full guitar lesson to the staff and they would kind of get the ballpark of it right. So that was part of the fun is like how can I get the stuff accurate? I went to music school. Why not just get it all right? It takes a little bit of extra pushing, but I think it's worth it.
Yeah, and I just love throughout the show as well. Yeah, Skarsgård's character just like constantly working on those sweeps.
Oh
Like,
yeah, yeah, it's true. I mean, because that's what I do too. I mean, it's sitting there and just working on like keeping your hand agile is like that's part of guitar. Like you take a couple weeks off and you gotta like get it back. So keep it always there. Keep it there all the time. So that's what Squiscar was doing. That's what I would do in meetings. I just sit there and run scales because I gotta keep my chops up for this show.
no, it's amazing guitar work just there. And like you were saying, with that the sort of the crucialness of having the music in there and transcending the boundaries, and that also goes back to the appeal of Deathklok and Metalocalypse around the world. Just it doesn't matter what language you may know, uh, the music is going to hit everybody.
I appreciate you saying that. That was the challenge for me is like, can you know, I would watch TV. I'd watch Saturday Night Live or I'd watch, and I'd always ask myself, are they doing their absolute best sketch? And sometimes, at Saturday Night Live, they're writing in one week. It's really hard to hone something in one week. But I'd always think, with music, can I find the time to hone something enough to make it interesting to an audience to come back to, to experience and then hopefully go back and re-experience? Can I interest you enough to eventually, get through an entire song? I think it's a daunting thing to put a song in front of somebody and say, listen to this, because I don't know, maybe somebody's been excited about a song and you look at the timeline and you go, I've got 4 more minutes of this left and I'm not interested in it. So how do I make it interesting to an audience? How do I make it interesting to me? How do I make it interesting to that 14-year-old kid that still arms folded, frowning 14-year-old kid that still lives inside of me? How can I get that kid happy? And that's who I'm trying to please with all this stuff is that frowny asshole that is me.
And I guess it's a good thing then that Deathklok was more on the thrash end of things than Doom.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, it's fun. It's fun being able, you know what, that's the thing about Metalocalypse and Deathklok is that we always were careful to call them an extreme metal band and not a death metal band or not even a thrash metal band. But how can I cherry pick my favorite elements and then add to it elements that aren't necessarily in heavy metal at all, even like, taking more of a Brian May approach to chord harmony and stuff, taking even like more of that Baroque approach that Ingve would do, or that that Brian May would do, or that even Richie Blackmore would do, or Mozart, or because that was what I was studying at music school at the same time, was traditional harmony plus anything but heavy metal. They didn't teach any heavy metal stuff back then, so it was really rare to get any heavy metal. So I was learning fundamental kind of chord harmony stuff that was really important. And I would develop a bag of tricks and throw it all into this, what would be the DETHKLOK pot. Metallica, Cannibal Corpse, Queen, all that shit in the same place, extreme metal.
Stomp on that HM2 and it all becomes metal.
Yeah, kind of, yeah. And then how can I put it all? And then once Nathan Explosion starts singing, it all kind of turns into DETHKLOK at some point.
It's cool how each of the characters in DETHKLOK kind of lean more to one of those subgenres, so it really does bring that cocktail of metal together. But aside from the core cast, the band itself, you had so many amazing guest performers come in and join you through the course of the show of DETHKLOK. I
Yeah.
mean, you had members of Metallica, you had Mike Patton, you had King Diamond. I mean, I could, yeah, by the time I list
Yeah.
this, we'd be out of time. We've only got a few minutes left. What I wanted to know, was there anyone who came in for a guest spot with you that really like blew you away with how well they sort of adapted to the voiceover work? Like, bro, you should probably hang up the
Oh,
instruments and be a voice actor.
absolutely. You know who was really just who just like by the way, everyone rose to the occasion. Everyone that we had on the show. Some would be start out a little bit more shy. Then the advice I would offer is, if you start feeling silly, you start feeling stupid, you're doing it right. Let's just break through that stupid, silly feeling and then get to the other side and have fun. But I remember Michael Amott from Arch Enemy came in, and his voice was like nice and hoarse because he does, he does a little bit of vocalization in Arch Enemy. And he came in and he has this, his accent is kind of Swedish and English. And so he had a gravitas about him, and he understood how to speak and word to put like the stress. And if I gave him a direction and he'd like take it and work with it really well. He was just a natural. So I thought, I always remember him being really great. And then, we had everybody from guitar heroes of mine, from like, Billy Gibbons came and did a voice, and he just, of course, is a total showman and understands how to do all that stuff. Steve Vai, Joe Satriani, they all kind of got it. Slash came in. Dave Grohl came in. He was funny. He's a natural. I mean, it makes sense with him. And then, but members from Enslaved, from Exodus, all funny, just like everyone has. That's the thing, is I wanted to make sure everyone's perception of heavy metal is so different than the reality, because heavy metal is brutal, and it evokes a feeling and a mood that's so dark and so awesome. But everyone's got a sense of humor, everyone's got levity, and I wanted everyone to participate and become part of the joke of the show. I didn't want to be a them or us thing. I wanted everyone to go like, this is your playground. Let's give you an opportunity to be funny. What can we do? Let's play.
Make an awesome show, apparently.
It was so cool that those guys said yes. I was really like I was trying to be extra clever when we started the show. I thought, if we can get Metallica on the first episode, then I bet I can get other people to come into our world of silly, weird absurdity and play with us.
Yes, Metallica is definitely a get. Now, just as a final question,
Yeah.
uh, prior to Metalocalypse, you had another show called Home Movies, which uh, the main character has your name, so I don't know how bio-autographical that show was. Uh, but there was definitely in that show a lot of musical elements as part of that as well, inherent to you being a musician. And in particular, on that, you did an episode that was a musical about Kafka.
Yes.
That absurdist element certainly rings all through your work. Did that become something that you sort of intentionally went for, or did that just align with your own absurdity?
It's almost like um usually what I'm trying to do, I feel like an ant and there's some barrier in front of me and I end up going around the barrier and discovering something new. In that particular episode, I know I wanted to do a rock opera in this silly little world based on the movie Tron. And that to me was what I was going for. And I remember it was the first time I was probably in my early 20s. And I remember having to sit on the phone with lawyers. They said, listen, we got to talk to a lawyer to see if we can parody this, satirize this, whatever. And I got talked out of using, and I was really excited to be spending somebody's money talking to a lawyer about a Tron musical. So I was just very happy to be in that seat because I was like, I've made it to where I want to be like talking about Tron with a lawyer. So, so he said, listen, that Tron is owned by Disney. I don't think you want to get into any kind of tussle. I don't think you want to be in a position. I would advise that you don't use Tron, but you can use something else. I've got a couple of seconds, so it's okay. You can use something else that's in public domain. And I went back and I thought, oh, right, that is like, okay, well, public domain. Shakespeare's in public domain, right? So you have West Side Story, right? That is Shakespeare. That is Romeo and Juliet. Okay, they've done that before. Jesus Christ Superstar. That's the Bible. That's in public domain. You can talk about that. And I thought, what else is in public domain? And I looked at a quick list and I thought, oh, Franz Kafka's Metamorphosis is in public domain as well. Well, I read that book once, but what would like a 15-year-old, because the character that's kind of writing it with young Brendon on the show is like a me 14-year-old guitar player kind of version of me. And I thought that guy would probably have read it, and these would be the Cliff's Notes versions, the shortened, cheating version of understanding the story. So that was the genesis of that. And you're right, absurdity and trying to mix things up has been part of what I've always done. That plus trying to figure out a character, and then how can I shoehorn my guitar in there somewhere?
Yeah, where did the blazing riffs come from?
Yeah.
Well, we're all set. We're all ready, willing and waiting for your blazing riffs to make it to the shores of Australia. We're going to see you in April. I sure as hell will be there. Thank you so much again, Brendan.
Absolutely. We are so excited to come to Australia, so we can't wait to play for you guys.